Welcome to Reddit Aliens. Redditors who have been in prison. What's the scariest thing you have seen or heard in prison? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Brazil. Once the lights went out, you'd start hearing scraping noises on the concrete. It was gang members sharpening their homemade knives on the concrete floor. Somebody was about to get killed when you heard that noise. Stuff straight out of hell. I was in county jail, but in a rough part of Southern California. We had triple-stack bunk beds in general population in just a large open room. I had a middle bunk, and oftentimes at night, guys would try to stealthily jerk off. The bed shaking is a dead giveaway, and usually you just try to ignore it. Well, one night I'm reading, and the bed started shaking vigorously, which is not how you do it. As I was putting my book down to tell the dude knock it off, he fell off his bunk and cracked his skull open on the concrete floor. He had a seizure on the top of the bunk and fell down about 7 feet straight to the concrete head first. That was a gnarly sight to see. The worst for me were the dietary punishments. There was that court ruling years ago that Nutriloaf is not cruel or unusual punishment, and there's no requirement that prison food be appealing to eat as long as it's safe. So since then, these sort of punishments got worse and worse. If you weren't a model inmate, your food would basically look and smell like stale, canned cat food. They'd mix it with vinegar too, to make it even harder to stomach. This next one does sound pretty terrible, actually.
Not me, but I know from friends in Africa that in their country, people caught poaching are often locked in prison cells with a lion, separated by metal bars, of course. The lion is usually one being rehabbed and has plenty of room to move around. It's a huge cell, and 95% of it belongs to the lion. The inmate is put in a narrow strip against the wall. I thought that sounded like not much worse than regular prison because the lion can't reach you, but they said until you've been in there, you can imagine how terrifying it is. When you're close enough to a lion to smell its breath and see its glowing eyes at night and can't get away, the lion's food and water is put right against the separation bars, so it spends a good chunk of its time voluntarily near the criminal. When it's there, the inmate can't get more than 3 or 4 feet away from the lion. Probably seeing the lengths people will go to in order to get opioid replacement therapy like Bupe or Suboxone in order to either sell to someone else or because they're being intimidated to give their dosage to someone. Inmates have to swallow the liquid in front of a guard and nurse, obviously, but they've figured out ways around this, creating little paper catchments and sticking them in their throat, or just being empty-stomached and vomiting it up when they get back to their cells. Spent a year at a minimum security prison farm in the South. I thought it would be a better experience due to less violence, but it's hell. I had to spend 50 hours a week cleaning huge pig barns and chicken coops, preparing slop for the pigs out of the most repulsive restaurant grocery waste that has been dumped on site every week. We got almost no visitors because we all stunk so bad. If you broke prison rules, you'd lose shovel privileges, which was its own special hell. You'd still get thin gloves to muck pig pens with to meet minimum safety requirements, but no shovel. New arrivals, who were city boys like me, often threw up a ton their first week. Legit crazy people who are not faking but schizophrenic or something else wrong. Feel sorry for them because other inmates will F them up. Dude sitting there rambling to himself every waking moment, and guards just let the nutcase and gen pop to irritate everyone until someone shuts him up. Lots of crazy people need to be somewhere else but gen pop. Oh, and I was in group therapy and this dude had a ball in his hand when talking, and I figured it was like something he got from the commissary. Don't think much of it. Then someone comes up to him holding a trash can. It was a ball of his own shit. Ugh.
The lengths that people will go to survive know no limits. This story is proof.
My relative, Russia, Soviet times mafia, told me that one of his cellmates used a mug and a nail and hammered his scrotum to a chair just to get to the hospital to evade being killed. That's the spirit. I used to be a correctional officer in Singapore, where judicial caning is still used as punishment for certain crimes and prison offenses. I had to carry it out myself, but I saw it plenty of times. Among the inmates, they would act like they're not scared of it, it's not a big deal, etc. to save face. But privately, in the caning room, they're caned in private, not in front of other inmates,
I've never seen anything that can make hardened criminals break down and cry like the cane can. For those who don't know, it's a lot more severe than Sharia whipping used in many countries. That is more for humiliation, while caning is caused for maximum pain. I saw grown men cry, beg, plead, throw up, even pass out from the pain. They have to keep a doctor on hand. Smaller offenders who got 3 strokes would be okay though, after a miserable week or 2. Rapists who got the 24-stroke maximum though, were never the same. Kettling is big in UK prisons, mixing sugar and boiling water to make a napalm-like substance to throw on poor people. Hands down though, the worst thing I personally saw was when I worked as a violence reduction buddy. I talked to a man in isolation who had sliced himself all over with a razor blade and was rubbing his shit into the cuts. I've only ever been in jail, but I met one of my friends there who has been in and out of prison for a heroin addict, and one of his most traumatic memories is helplessly listening to his friend being raped in the next cell to him while the guard did nothing. I also heard about a woman who was giving birth in her cell, begging to go to a hospital, but the guards didn't believe her and didn't get her any medical help until the baby was halfway out already. If she had had complications, they probably would have both died. I turned 21 in solitary confinement, was only put in for 2 weeks for passing contraband, effing soups. The guy next to me had been in for months. The windows are frosted so you can't see outside into the world. The guards come by twice a day and point a taser at you while they tear your cell up, while you're naked. The screams at night from the guy in the cell next to me were so effing heartbroken. It didn't sound human at all, just helplessness and sorrow. Sorry, I know you're not looking for stories of fights and shankings, but the thing that disturbed me the most was listening to that man every night for those 2 weeks. A really tragic story. My sister taught in a juvenile prison. There was a really troublesome juvenile inmate who would always brag that his uncle was the head of a gang in the adult prison next door. When the juvenile turned 18, he was transferred to the adult prison, and the uncle sold him to a rival gang. The boy was molested and raped repeatedly until he hung himself. I had a cellie who had been in for 30 years. He was institutionalized. He had been in since he was 18 and he was almost 50. He was serving a life sentence for murder. Just knowing him was disturbing enough to give the soul chills. I can't describe the feeling. I walked on eggshells around him. He never did anything to me, but I knew one false move and he could have easily effed me up or killed me. He put me in fear. I know he knew it too. I've been to prison twice. Once for assaulting my stepmom, she deserved it, and once for solicitation. I'm a woman, and I don't know how much different are prisons compared to the men's. For one, every prison is different, from how it's ran to what level. County, state, federal, or even just a stay at the local precinct. Every state runs their prisons differently as well. The most disturbing thing was the amount of sex going on between inmates was bad, but an insane amount of sex was going on with the guards and inmates. It was under the guise of consensual sex, but you couldn't really say no to them. It's not that the guards would directly retaliate, but they wouldn't protect you, or possibly leave you in a bad situation. One of the newer girls refused to do anything with the guards. They left her handcuffed with an aggressive inmate. It wasn't pretty. Stuff like that was common, or you'll be roommates with a rapist. The other thing that was really disturbing was how some of the girls owned other girls. The only known pedophile we had was a creepy older lady. She owned several girls, all petite younger girls of course. We nicknamed them her daughters.
Do you know the difference between prison or jail? If you do, comment below. I'd actually like to know too.
Not prison, but did a month in jail. My cellmate would steal the candy I bought from the commissary that I had hidden under my pillow when I was sleeping. I caught him once, and we got into an argument. He threatened to rip off my head and shit down my throat. This same guy was also making Pruno in our cell. When I found out about it, I told him to dump it out. He said he would and did, but he just packed soap around it and hid it to hide the smell. I dumped it out on him when he was in the shower. During the same stint, a guy from solitary was brought into our block. He got in an argument with his cellmate about who has the top or bottom bunk. Solitary confinement guy was about 6'3". Other guy was about 5'6". Other guy had just come from the shower, so only had a towel on with wet feet. Solitary guy threw one punch and absolutely laid him out. There was also a guy that came into our block that smuggled in Suboxone in his prison wallet. He shit it out in the shower, which pissed a bunch of us off. When the guards found out, they started to take him out, and he tried to make a run for it.